Hello, welcome to part 6 of lab number 64 of CKAD exam. Again, I want to reiterate the fact that you don't have to know how to do this really long lab in the exam. You can pass, definitely you can pass not knowing how to do this. However, make sure you do know how to do the parts. If you're given a lab that has one or two of these things, you should be able to do that. If you miss the one that are really long, you can still pass the test. It's not required. But it's good to know all the details so you get more depth and width of your knowledge. All right, back to requirement. When you last left it, we were trying to figure out. We were doing. Let me see. Yeah. So the requirement was this, and we realized that I had created a secret, not a config map. So we created a secret. Now we have to mount the secret. We have to mount the config map that we just created under in the pod. So in certain paths. So let's go to our documentation, look for config map, not config gap, config map. Config map. Hopefully this gives us an example of how to mount it. Not there. This is just a config map example. Environment, volume mount. There you go. Mount points. This is under containers, you see. Yeah, so again, same story. So if you remember from the last part of this lab, we had to mount the volume, empty directory volume in the pod, and then, well, define it in the pod, mount it in the container. So same thing here. So we have to define it in the pod, volumes, config map. This looks complicated. Let's see. Spec containers volume. Okay, volume. Yep, that's right. Inside the provide the name of the config map you want to mount. Okay. So under volume, this will be our example. All right. So under volume, you see in the template section, which is the equivalent of the pod section, we have volumes. This is a container. So here's volumes under the pod. So we're just going to create another. Remember, this was an array, so we can just give it more elements. So here is the name of the config map, CM1, and this happens to be the config map. Let's make sure that it's aligned the right way. Config map is aligned with the name. Okay, and we don't need the comments. Name, we already gave that. We don't need that. Okay, so this is, let's see, undo that. An array of items. So and the items should be aligned with name. Okay, so that goes like this. That means this has to, let me make sure name config map name. Config map aligns items is actually under config map's name. Okay, it looks like config map needs its own name. Okay, let's do that. Name equals CM1, for example. Items is part of config map and it's an array. So key is CM1, it's a string, and path. Now the path in the requirement says under foo-cm. I'm not clear why the path doesn't have an actual slash in it. So let's just make this like so. Foo-cm. We don't need a second key because we only have one. All right, so that should do the pod part. Now we need to again come to containers and actually mount it, right? Fortunately, we already have an example, so we can do an array here, 2yy. So mount path is foo-cm, and name should be cm1. Let me make sure that it works out like that. So that, and volume mounts config name is config, mount path is this, read only true. That's fine. They didn't talk about that. Okay, so I will have to go to part 7 just to confirm everything is working and troubleshoot if there's a problem. So I will see you in part 7 of lab 64.